All right, with that being said, I want to move on to the question where I was asked, well, in today's society, how do you keep from being shot by a police officer? Or how do you keep from being killed by a gun when so many people are being killed by guns? First, let's deal with that first part, how to keep from being shot by a police officer. Well, it's easier than you might think. The main thing you can do to not be shot by a cop is don't commit a crime. Don't create a reason where you're interacting with police. One of the things we seem to forget in all these instances is when cops go too far and do commit murder sometimes, it's very seldom because they had no reason to be interacting with the person. There was usually a reason. So don't give them a reason to interact with you. Don't commit crimes. If you don't commit crimes, your chance of getting shot by police is almost nothing. Now, there are times when police are going to target you or think you did something you didn't do, and they're going to interact with you. If that happens, even though you've done nothing wrong, the number one way to not be shot by a police officer is to cooperate fully. Do not argue with them. Do not think you're going to win a debate on the corner of the road with a police officer. The time to prove you're right is in front of a judge, not in front of that officer. Just go, whatever, take it and say, I'll see you in court. Thank you, officer. I'll see you in court. That'll reduce your chances of being shot by police to, like I said, pretty much zero. Now, there will be some cases like Philando Castile, where you do everything right and you still get shot. But those are so rare and so they're just freak occurrences. And, you know, you might get hit by a meteor or struck by lightning tomorrow. There's not much you can do to prepare for freak occurrences. But if you don't commit crimes and you cooperate with police officers, chances are you won't get shot. Very slim chance it'll happen. Another thing you can do is if you're someone who calls in a crime or you see a crime happening or a crime scene happening, avoid it. If you call in a crime, like that lady that called in the crime and ended up being shot by police, even though she was the one that called them, if you see something going on, call police, get yourself to a safe location. Don't stay there. Don't sit in your car there by the crime. Go somewhere else. That's just smart thinking, just planning ahead. If you look out your window and you see lights and sirens and you hear sirens and cops are running around, don't go out in your yard on the cell phone. Like that gentleman who got shot for standing in his yard talking on a cell phone when cops were chasing a suspect through yards. The guy did nothing wrong, but he made an error of judgment in going out into that scene. Don't go out into that scene. If you see police doing something, running around, searching frantically for someone, lights are on, sirens are on, avoid that situation. Don't go out into it. Stay inside. Go the other way if you're walking down the street. Just use some common sense reasoning and you will probably be fine. But like I'm saying, this won't eliminate your chances to absolute zero if you do all these things, but it'll make it to where it's close enough to zero that there's really no difference. So just follow those rules. You probably will never be shot by a police officer. Now, as far as being shot by somebody else, in these massive waves of violence in this country, that the politicians want you to believe are happening and the media wants you to believe are happening, which aren't. Well, the number one way, if you don't want to be killed by anybody with a firearm, is don't kill yourself, because that's the vast majority. Seek counseling if you're depressed, if you're upset, if you have an issue that you don't think you can resolve, if it feels like you've got no reason to keep going on, tell people, let them know. Seek the help you need, because there are tons of reasons to keep going on. You just can't see them right now. So if you do that, that'll reduce your odds. 70% of your chances of being killed by a firearm will be gone right there, just that you choose not to do it yourself. And as far as being killed by someone else, or a stranger, there's the same 3 rules you can follow. There's 3 rules you can follow. One of them is the same thing as police officers. Don't commit crimes. A lot of people that get killed by other people are in the commission of a crime when they do it, either committing the crime or being the victim of a crime. But usually it's fellow criminals associating with other criminals, and one of them gets shot. So not being a criminal is still one of the number one ways you can not get shot. Don't be a criminal. The second rule for not getting killed by a firearm is Do not have relationships with emotionally unstable people. Don't go, they're crazy, but I love them. A lot of gun deaths are crimes of passion or revenge. Lovers spurned, boyfriends dumped, things like that. So don't get in relationships with unhealthy people, mentally unhealthy people. And if you're in a relationship with someone, don't be abusive. Physically, emotionally, mentally, a lot of this comes from that. A lot of these crimes of passion come from people that get into relationships, they cheat, they abuse their spouse one way or another. And that spouse has enough, decides that's the end for both of them. Also, pay attention to mental illness in your family. If you think your partner is mentally ill, one of your kids is mentally ill, they have issues, don't avoid them. Don't say that kind of thing won't happen to my family. My family's okay. Deal with it. Just don't get into bad relationships. Don't turn relationships bad, and don't ignore problems in your familiar relationships with family. Chances are you won't get shot and killed by one of them if you do those things. That's one of the best ways to not get shot by a gun. The third way to not be killed by a firearm in this country, the one that will reduce your chances greatly from being killed, because if you look at a lot of the crime statistics and a lot of the violence statistics, one way you can reduce your chances of being killed by a gun to almost nothing is don't join a gang. Don't be a gang member. Gang violence accounts for a majority. Criminal activity, gang activity, cartel activity, etc. accounts for a huge chunk of all the gun deaths that aren't caused by suicide. So if you take that out of the mix, you don't join a gang, you don't be a criminal, you don't do the things like I've talked about already, chances are you won't be killed by a gun. Because the reality is, in this country, your chances of being killed, even if you look at all the ways you can be killed, beaten to death with a pipe, stabbed, shot, whatever, your chances of being murdered are very slim. And if you do those things like I've said, don't be criminals, don't argue with cops, don't put yourself in bad situations, don't have bad relationships, don't make relationships bad, don't join a gang. If you do those things in this country, your chances of being killed, period, are almost non-existent. So just follow those simple rules. And another thing you can do to prevent yourself from being killed by somebody else with a firearm, and this is an important one, be prepared to defend yourself. If you're huddled behind a stack of canned goods at a grocery store when someone starts shooting, have the ability to shoot back. Don't be a victim. That's one of the things I try to tell people every day, because there's lots of things in your life you can't control. You can't control what someone else does. You often can't control who comes within your vicinity. So there are some things that are outside your control. So for those things, just be able to defend yourself. Don't be stuck in the bathroom of a nightclub saying he's coming down the hallway shooting people and there's nothing we can do, we can't get out. Don't find yourself in that terrifying situation. Say, there's a guy shooting, I've taken up a position of cover. As soon as I lay eyes on him, I'm putting him down. That's a much better position to find yourself in. So follow those rules, like I said, to avoid issues. Be prepared when things outside your ability to control happen. And you probably, in this country, won't be murdered, period, much less by a firearm.